I think the big question for me with regards to the Championship playoff scramble this season is how many spaces are going to be made available, because you certainly have a group of 4 teams, Sheffield United, Sunderland, Burnley and Leeds, of course, who are very much in the market for automatic promotion, and Middlesbrough, if they can prove themselves against some of the better teams, carrying on their recent form, they could easily come into that category to make it 5 as well. So is there going to be 2 spaces up for grabs for the outsiders, or 1? That's a big question. Have we underrated Watford? Have we overrated West Bromwich Albion? Can Norwich hit their stride? Or could Blackburn Rovers, Millwall, Bristol City, or even Sheffield Wednesday make their way in against the odds? Lots of big questions, and we're going to do our best to answer them on this Championship podcast. Yes, welcome along to this Championship podcast here on EFL Debate. You could do us a massive favour now by hitting that subscribe button on YouTube and on Spotify. For now, delighted to be joined by my co-host Ollie Mann of Sheffield United Way. Ollie, you're not even in the playoff scramble chat.
No, we're not even talking about us. We're already there. Everyone said, nah, don't worry about it. They're going to make the playoffs. They'll be all right. And to be honest, after Friday night, it's one of them where I'm starting to believe them, because that was a fantastic win. It was a brilliant game of football, I thought. A real advert for the Championship. Sunderland will feel hard done too. I don't care. I just thought it was an awesome victory for us. And I'm feeling pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that Sunderland deserved at least a point from that game, if we're being fair. It's funny because the first red card happened when Sunderland were very much, I thought, the better side. And it was a moment of madness, wasn't it, from Chris Mepham? Well, delighted to be joined by my first guest, which is Johnny Bullock from the Borough Breakdown. Johnny, really, really good to see you as always. Great form for Middlesbrough. I think we've always known that you're one of the most creative sides in the league. You're starting to add firepower and clinical finishing to that as well. So I suppose, how close are you to feeling like you might even be part of the automatic promotion conversation rather than these playoff scramble chats?
I'll take that, Gav. I'll take that. If you want to say so, we're going to be an automatic team. And I don't think we're too far away. I really don't. I think the defeat to Blackburn might be seen as a big blip in Middlesbrough's credentials. But, there was a lot of injuries and illnesses that game where we'd lost a lot of key players just before kickoff. And it was quite difficult, to replace it, and the creativity wasn't there. But I think you've seen against Hull that, start to click again as how important Finn Azaz is. And I don't think we're too far away at all. If we go to Burnley and beat them on Friday night, then you've got to be in the mix there. You have to be. I think, obviously we've beat Sheffield United, sorry, Ollie. But it's like the defeat to Sunderland wasn't as good as we wanted it to be. But we've already beat Leeds this season as well in the Carabao. So, I don't think we're too far away, Gab. I really don't. I think it's just, how can we just remain consistent until the end of the season, I think.
I feel like I'm spoilt for choice in terms of which player I'm going to bring up first, Johnny. I think I'm going to go with Finn Azaz, because just the flair, the creativity, the vision that he's brought to this Borough side in that attacking midfield role, it's been a joy to behold this season, hasn't it?
It's been amazing, Gab. It really has been. I'm running out of words to describe how good Finn Azaz is. His creativity is fantastic, both in his assists, creating chances, but also he's adding more goals to his game as well. And Middlesbrough is spoiled for choices going forwards at the minute. When you're seeing the likes of Tommy Conway getting a goal every 100 minutes, Lyle Laff scoring goals, Ben Doakes creating, Finn Azaz is just, for me, probably Borough's most important player out of the entire lot. He gets himself into really good positions, is able to just get himself in between the lines, but also his ability to find players in those right moments, in the right areas, is absolutely spectacular. I cannot believe we got him for £2 million, to be honest, Gab. What an absolute bargain. But I absolutely adore him. And you've seen against Blackburn how influential he is to this Middlesbrough side, with him being not in the squads because of illness. So, I can't complain, to be fair, Gab. I think he's just a wonderful, wonderful talent, and I have no more words to describe how good he is, to be honest.
I also wanted to ask you about Ben Doak, Johnny, because what I think there was I think it was the looping header from Tommy Conway where Doak just got this incredible technique on the cross, and that just sort of shows with the flair, kind of flair and inspiration that he's playing with right now. But whereas Middlesbrough in previous years have had a great right winger where it's like give the ball to them, like Adama Traore under Tony Pulis, or like Isaiah Jones, primarily under Chris Wilder, I think. It was where it's like, give the ball to them and that's that. I feel like with Ben Doak, he's part of an overall creative process as opposed to this give the ball to him and he'll make something out of nothing. It feels more organic, I suppose. And that's a real credit, or that's a real feather in Michael Carrick's cap for me.
It absolutely is. I think when you're in this division, you've got to add, and even probably divisions above, you've got to add more layers and layers and layers of attack. You've got to give someone so many different things to think about in certain games. So, like, if Middlesbrough are playing without the likes of Ben Doak, who do we have? Which will give you a problem. You've got a Finnazaz there. You have Riley McGree. I think Delano Bergzorg's been exceptional the last couple of games. Emmanuel Latila gets in behind and causes problems and stretches teams. So you add if you add loads of different layers starting from the back, probably defensively in set pieces, but then also the likes of Hayden Hackney, Aidan Morris, people who can really get the ball forward on the pitch into these attacking players. It all adds up, doesn't it? And it's no wonder why we create so much. I think it's just when it does click, everyone complements each other, but you've also got those layers as well, so you can't just solely double up or triple up on Ben Doak because someone else might hit you. And I think that's just a perfect recipe for a team who wants to score goals. And yeah, I think it's so nice to see, because I've been and seen so many poor Middlesbrough attacking outlets. I lived through Jonathan Woodgate, Neil Warnock, and Tony Pulis. Pretty much all back to back. So yeah, I'm going to enjoy this, I think. But yeah, it's that layers that count, isn't it? And can we continue to score? I think we can throughout the season, and maybe we could add to it as well in the January, fingers crossed. But if we can, then that's brilliant. If not, I'm really happy with what we've got.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing for me, because obviously we've seen all season a really consistent creativity from Middlesbrough. They've been top of the XG pretty much all season, I think, in terms of the chances they're creating. Obviously, the last month, those chances have all been hitting the back of the net. We've seen Conway, we've seen Latilaf, we've even seen Azaz. I think did he get 7 goals this month or something daft? He's just been on such fantastic form. But that's the big question mark for me, because I've said consistently from the start of the season, I think Borough are one of the best 2-3 teams in the league. I think they are consistently performing at that level. I think they've got all of the ingredients there to make sure that they can be at that level. But do you have the consistency? Because that's the thing that I still feel is missing. I understand it's injuries and it's sort of lacking, but it was a poor performance against Blackburn. It was unlucky to lose, but there are those moments that they're the questions that come to me is, if Middlesbrough are going to be consistent and really going to push on beyond what should be a guaranteed playoff position into that automatic promotion, do you think you can have that consistency, or do you think it's just going to continue the way it has been for really 2 seasons, where it's been sort of really high highs, but the lows really hold you back?
I think this is probably the year, to be fair, Ollie. I think this is where I think it'll become more consistent than it ever has been. Mm-hmm. And it's the chances we create on a consistent level where you think, okay, we could probably outscore a team rather than like just scraping through. Really, there's games where I'm going into it and I'm thinking, I'm not really that too concerned about other teams at the moment. I'm thinking if we can have a really good level, we create the chances, we stick them away, then great. But I think this is the year. I really do think it has been like a 3-year plan, really. I think when you look at Middlesbrough from when Chris Wilder was in charge and Kieran Scott came in the building, Middlesbrough went through this entire change of how we recruit players, how we play in a certain style, coach, and everyone has to be on this same wavelength. It's been building for about 3 years. So I think this is a really good opportunity for us, to be honest, if we can try and get up. And if we can be consistent, then that's great. But if not, then it's a difficult one, because you have a lot of quality in that side who I wouldn't be surprised if teams came sniffing around and asking for them already. So yeah, I think hopefully this is the year. I really do. How many times have I said that? I said it with you, Ollie, like last year before. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see this time around, but I think that this is a really good opportunity for us, to be honest.
One thing that stands out to me, Johnny, and another reason why I'm so big on the work Michael Carrick has done is that if I look at the 11, so you've got Delano Bergzorg, who you've given lots of credit to, and I agree, he's been great off the left and cutting inside and has had some really good moments. At the same time, it does feel like you're creating this crazily consistent rate of chances without really having a left-hand side. Because Neto Borges, with respect to him, I think he's a steady operator and I think he's solid and has had his place. But it's not like he's somebody who's constantly flying forward and providing the width and the quality and keeping opponents guessing. And normally, if your threat is maybe leaning more towards one side, you would face the challenge of opposing sides being able to maybe nullify that side and funnel the ball over to the other side where it's a bit weaker. I do think that that's going to be a challenge for you maybe to come when opposing sides possibly start to do that. But I also think you've got to give lots of credit to Carrick for being able to build this organically creative side without really having a left-hand side.
Yeah, how crazy is it that we just solely talk about left backs for Middlesbrough, isn't it? It's absolutely wild. I never thought a left back would be so important. And
you've seen Frank Quadro.
Yeah, look, I love French Frank. He's fantastic. We've had some great left backs over the years. Obviously, it's good to see Ryan Giles back at the weekend. And like this left back position, it seems to be a recurring or fundamental flaw, I think, of how Middlesbrough play, right? If you are trying to bomb one player forward or someone's coming inside, like we see with Riley McGree and Bergzorg, you are left with a lot of space in and around you, which is probably the reason why we get targeted quite a lot on that side. And it's not really a Borges or a Bangor or Engels' fault to too much because it is a 2v1 at times. But yeah, like we said earlier, it's that balance and also trying to get different layers and giving teams different things to think about. And will we go on the market for another left winger who can actually be someone who can stay out wide and stretch teams in a different way? I think that's definitely an angle we can go down. I would have liked to see Mike Hamilton just stretch a team a little bit at the midweek, but I know he's nursing an injury, so I can't see him being the level that he wants to be just yet. But I think it's definitely an avenue where we can probably improve on. Obviously, Louis Barry was mentioned midweek in terms of like a link, but yeah, it's a position where I think you could put anyone in that position when you still have problems. And will teams continue to target? Yeah, I think they probably will. But it's like, what can we do as a response to that? And that is the likes of Ben Doak, with Finn as if Ryan McGree's fit, he's there. You've got Delano Bergzorg, Conway, Latilaf. There's so many different options you can play with. And I think the one switch which I think we need to talk about is probably Luke Hale on that right-hand side. And or Dyke Steele as well. They are getting forward a lot more than what they've ever done previously under Carrick, where it used to be that left-hand side get forward. It's more so the right now, where Boro's switching that to the right. But, you've got to keep adding layers, haven't you? So if January comes around and we want one more player, then maybe that's the position, that left-wing position, where you think, okay, can we maybe change it just one more time, just to add something different? But, yeah, it's a position that we constantly chat about, to be fair, as Boro fans. You could have Roberto Carlos there, prime Roberto Carlos, and I feel like you might still have a couple of problems, to be honest.
Well, it'd be better than other Brazilians you've had. Listen, Johnny, thanks so much for joining us, and all the best for the rest of the season.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. Speak to you soon.
Cheers. Delighted to be joined now by Cam Smart of WD18 fans. Good evening, Cam. Thanks so much for joining us. How are you feeling about Watford season so far? And do you think you're a little bit underestimated, either externally or within your own fan base?
Feeling absolutely excellent about Watford. I think, to answer that, we're probably overestimated in our fan base and underestimated from the outside.
Right.
You're probably looking at Watford and thinking they're not a threat. They'll just sack their manager soon. But I mean, we play fantastic football at the moment. It's looking completely different to the Watford of the last 4 or 5 years, and I have reason to believe that we can secure that last playoff spot. I'm feeling very optimistic about Watford at the moment. I don't know how it looks to you, Gab.
Yeah, I think Tom Cleverley's done some incredible work. I think his in-game management has really stood out to me, because I watched the first half, Cam, of that goalless draw with QPR, obviously you'd have maybe hoped for a little bit more from that game.
Yeah.
But the 3-4-2-1 wasn't working, and he switched it to 4-2-3-1. And I think Quadro Bar came on for, was it Sierralta? And immediately. Yeah, so immediately you occupied them a bit more, and then there's a lot more space for Sousa. Imran Loser, sorry, getting my midfielders mixed up. For Loser to get on the ball and dictate more. So again, I think as much as I sometimes clamour for managers to go in with a clear identity and set formation and all that kind of thing, clear strategy, I also really like the fact that Tom Cleverley, to contradict myself entirely, I quite like the fact that Tom Cleverley shows that in-game adaptability and to be able to shake things up at halftime.
Yeah, his strength is definitely in the way that he changes it up. You can point to maybe that he doesn't start us off the right way, and that's why he so often has to change it. But there's no doubt that when it comes to half time, we're a completely different team in that second half. He makes all the right changes, whether it's subs, whether it's tweaking the system, or even just the little subtle tweaks, maybe moving one player further forward or changing from zonal to man marking. Just little subtle tweaks like that he's made throughout the season. And there's no pattern to it. There's no sort of limit to what Tom Cleverley's been able to change this season. It seems that any problem in front of us, he has an answer for it. I think the stumbling block for Tom is what he's got to work with, really, because I do think we've got a below par squad for a team wanting to be in the top half. Don't get me wrong, there's some fantastic players in there, and there's some that have really, really impressed me this season that haven't been too impressive in seasons gone by, but there is some dross in there that I don't think other championship clubs would be looking at picking up. So definitely a lot for us to work on, I'd say.
Yeah, I think one of the things for me with Watford that stands out more than anything else, I think it's been a really, really impressive start. Like, if we just to give it some context, go back 4 months and think about where we all thought Watford were going to be compared to where they are today. That just shows the work of Tom Cleverley and how impressive it's been. For me, where I have question marks is that Oxford have fantastic XG data in terms of their creation, but terrible XG data in terms of the chances that they're giving up. I think they've got the 4th worst XG conceded in the league in comparison to a lot of sort of the other clubs in and around that playoffs. Generally speaking, you're talking Millwall are top 6. I think Middlesbrough are top 6. It's a lot to ask for a team to continually not be conceding those chances and still pushing forward to win games of football. Do you think there is work to be done defensively, Cameron, or are you seeing that slightly different in terms of the eye test? And do you feel you're a bit more comfortable than that maybe suggests?
Oh no, without a doubt, we are not comfortable at the back. I'm looking at usually promoted teams, and I'm actually looking at Burnley and Sheffield United this season as well. They're solid at the back, and even when you're not on it going forwards, because you're not always going to be on it going forwards, even when we're not on it, we can still keep that clean sheet if we're defensively solid. That's what our last promotion was based around, really. We had the best championship defense of all time, but we were so boring going forwards, but it did the job. But listen, if you offer me that or what we've got now, I'm taking what we've got now all day long, because it's not a chore to watch Watford anymore. We play some of the most entertaining football in the league. Obviously, for a neutral, we're probably the best team there is, really. I don't think any team's had more goals in their games than us in this league, maybe bar Middlesbrough. So yeah, it is really good to see us so good going forwards. Defensively, I think a lot of it is down to that midfield that we've got. It's a very passive midfield. There's players in there like Kayembe, Sissoko. They don't really have defense as their first thought. They're very passive and they let runners go off them left, right, and centre. Our better midfielders, Imran Loser, Tom Dele-Bashiru, their first thought isn't to defend either. So it just begs the question, who in there wants to defend? And I think that's something we really need to address in January, and hopefully it will solve a lot of the problems we've got at the back.
Yeah, I can definitely see how it needs a powerful combative presence in midfield, Cam. I think from a weakness of Watford to a clear strength, and that's the 1v1 ability of some of those ball carriers in this team in different ways. Shaq Vatadze is obviously a very skillful operator, whereas there's other players like Vestia Beausoleil, who's just absolutely rapid. But one player that's really stood out to me, and I had to remind you that he was on the books in the summer, was Quadro Bar, because I've always had an inkling. This sounds like me being wise after the event, but I've always had, I know, yeah, always had an inkling about his talent because he showed a lot of potential at Rochdale, even though it was a brief period there before he was snapped up. He scored a couple of amazing goals at Charlton under Brian Barry Murphy in the 2021 season. You can tell that he's a very gifted ball carrier, and it's felt like he lost a couple of some momentum in the subsequent couple of years, and maybe made the big jump too soon. I might have felt, but it doesn't hugely shock me that he suddenly shot out of the pack because of that 1v1 ability that we're sort of seeing now.
Well, that makes one of us because he's completely come out of nowhere for us. Played pre-season as a number 9, and we thought, right, okay, yeah, someone's got to play there. I didn't quite expect him to have the impact that he has. He's often playing as a right number 10, but sometimes he's an outright right winger, sometimes on the left as well. But there's just no stopping him when he's running at you. Any fullback in this league is going to have a nightmare against him. And I'll credit Leeds because I think they've got a fantastic back line, but they couldn't deal with Quadro Bar when we went there a few weeks ago. And no team that's come up against him really, besides whoever we played the other day, Bristol City, they dealt with him quite well. But other than that, he's had the running of everyone. And what I really like is that he has end product to go with it. And if we just had a more mobile, nuisance of a striker in the middle, just someone that makes the right runs, someone wanting to get across their man. If we had that, then Quadro Bar would be getting assists every other game because he puts in some delicious crosses and there's absolutely no one in there to get on the end of them at times. So yeah, he's an absolute joy to watch, and one that you were definitely right about, Gab.
So what do Watford need in January then, Cam? We've talked about a combative midfield presence. That's the obvious one. What else would you say?
Yeah, definitely the midfielder. Striker situation is quite something, and it has been for years now. Obviously, Vac and Bio, you're quite a fan of, aren't you, Gab?
I've definitely preferred him to the other lads that you've had up top because he's very physical. I could imagine if I'm a centre half, I wouldn't like to play against him. Whereas I would have looked at somebody like Rahovic or someone like that and felt like I could probably not that I'm completely different level to Rahovic.
I think you could deal with
but I would be less terrified of facing some of the other strikers you've had in previous seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Bio, funny. I was writing something for a QPR pod the other day, and yeah, that's right. They asked who our most dangerous players are, and I thought, right, well, Bio's in a purple patch at the moment, put him in there. Then they asked who our weakest players are, and I thought, hang on, Bio belongs in here as well. And I think that just sums up Bio because he can really spring to life. He can be a nuisance. He can link the play once every 5 games maybe, and when he's not on it, it's like being down to 10 men. It's really painful to watch at times. So strikers definitely needed. It looks like Dan Jebson's heading back to Bournemouth as well. That's one that really hasn't got going. So yeah, striker and defensive midfielder are a big need. I'd love a goalkeeper. Don't see it happening. Backman, to be fair to him, he's found
a back man.
He's found a bit of form last few games after a horrible run. So it doesn't look like he'll be going anywhere. But yeah, other than that, a striker and a midfielder through the door, and I'd feel pretty confident.
Well, let's hope that confidence manifests itself in the second half of the season, Cam. Thanks so much for joining us, and best of luck, because clearly Tom Clevy's doing a great job. So look forward to hearing from you later in the campaign.
Yes, thank you very much for having me on, guys.
Top man, appreciate it. Top man, appreciate that, Cam. Delighted to be joined now by Ollie Collins of Jolly Ollie on TikTok. Ollie, thanks for waiting. Really appreciate your time this evening. In spite of me only including one Blackburn Rovers player in my team of the week.
Don't hold it against you, but go on, keep going.
You're a good man, Ollie. I want to talk about the Travstad midfield pairing because that's really grabbing me at the moment.
Yeah, please do excuse me if I'm coughing, by the way. I'm just kind of fighting a bit of a cold at the moment. But Lewis Travis, a player, we should have let Travis go in the first place, and people know within the club the reasons for that. But him and Tronstad this year, I mean, you saw it in the last two games especially, the way we've set up, the way they've sat on the edge of the box, the way they broke out. Tronstad especially, such the most comfortable, relaxed player. And I don't want to compare him to any form of Rodri, because that would be overemphasizing or anything else like that. But for a guy who's sort of 29,
we'll compare him to Josh Cullen, Ollie.
No, let's not talk about it. Anyway, okay, that's but he's been so elegant this year in terms of what he does. I've said to all the Rovers fans around me, he will go massively unnoticed. While a lot of people will give Player of the Year at the moment to places like, people like Owen Beck and Lewis Travis, I think Tronstad's that one person. There's just a great element of consistency, works the back line very well, allows Hyman Bath just to be a lot more comfortable. It's been a pleasure to see those two doing what they do.
Ollie, what do you make of where Blackburn Rovers are at? Because you look at that, like we've talked about Leeds and Middlesbrough as being two of the most creative sides in the league. So not only have they won their last three games to kind of revitalise this unlikely playoff push, they've also kept clean sheets against two of the most creative sides in the league, which is a real achievement.
Yeah, it's really.
Sorry, I was actually asking Ollie Mann.
It's all right.
I'm going to say, which Ollie, where are we going?
I know,
yeah, I think it's been really impressive. And I think that defensive solidity in those games in particular is huge. And I think that really sends a message, because I did think that Blackburn's push was petering out, to be honest. In my head, I'd already almost downgraded them from this conversation into that sort of mid-table positioning, because we'd seen the difficulties start to come. They'd had a little bit of a bad run where they weren't able to get the results over the line. And that, to me, felt almost in line with what I expected. The fantastic start to the season wears off a little bit, and we thought that Blackburn would probably be lower mid-table. But these last three results are huge, and it's the manner of those performances as well. By all accounts, it's a deserved win against Leeds. It's a deserved win against Middlesbrough. These aren't riding your luck and just sitting it out and keepers had a worldie, they've missed 10 sitters. It's actually deserved, consistent performances, and that is really, really impressive. I still think there's a little bit of work to do in terms of making sure they can do it away from home, making sure that they're not just sort of relying on what's happening at Ewood Park. But yeah, it's been really impressive, and I think this last week or so really does make you sit up and take notice and think, actually, they're still going to have something to say about this conversation, even if I have to admit, for me, they're not one of the teams I think will be in that sixth spot come May.
Ollie, I think every Blackburn fan's quite realistic about our chances this year. So we're not under any illusions. While you've got the teams around us who I think have got... They've probably got... I've listened to the Middlesbrough lad before. They've got more investments in terms of where they want to be. We've had to deal with problems off the field, which have effectively made things a bit more difficult on the pitch as a back season. We were told that when Samaric's is going to go, where the goals are going to come from. The goals are spread all over the pitch. Clean sheet. Eustace is doing so much this season in terms of clean sheets, coming from behind to gain more points. There's a lot of good things that's happening at Rose at the moment. Now, it might be you. Nobody talks about Blackburn, and I'm happy that way. I don't expect to be in the conversation. And Gab knows as well, when he's asked me to give my honest opinion about Rovers' chance in the playoffs, I just downplay it. I just don't think it's happening. We're here on merit, by the way. Let's just remember one thing. We're here on merits, okay? And, I mean, playing Leeds this week, I'm sure Leeds will give a different perspective, but Rovers basically stifled them so well. We did exactly the same to Middlesbrough. And I'm loving the compliments, because it's not a false way of how we've won the game. We've gone out with a game plan. Eustace has implemented that same game plan against Borough as he did against Leeds. And we didn't let Leeds get into a rhythm. We didn't let them turn up with a big club mentality. Same with everybody else. just little Blackburn Rovers just happen to be in the conversation. And that's good enough for Rovers fans. We probably said this season we'd get anything from, say, 17th upwards. And now all of a sudden we're just kind of flirting, which I always, I did expect it this season. If we get through the festive period and we're still here talking about us, then we are genuine contenders. But believe me, I think Rovers fans are under no illusions that we would do anything, even though it's been the 30-year anniversary since we won the Premier League title. But let's not read too much into that anyway.
Absolutely. I want to talk to you about Danny Bart, Ollie, because I think I'm seeing a trend of championship clubs at the moment really prioritise high potential assets and centre halves that can really play out and saleable assets basically. And I think what kind of gets underestimated is doing the basics well. And with Danny Bart, throughout his career, he's always been one of those centre-backs where you would so rarely see him lose a header. He's impeccably consistent at the basics. I think he organises and seems to be having a great partnership with Dom Heim. So do you think the qualities that he brings are actually a little bit underrated sometimes elsewhere in the Championship?
I think when we nicked him in the summer, and I don't think Nick's a good assessment, but we were after him probably about a year or so ago. And Rovers, being sort of the bit tight-fisted as we are, didn't really want to go and spend the money. So to get him on a free, I think is a bit of a coup. And I think the only reason that Bath has had the time is because Hayden Carter was taken out. Hayden Carter likes to, drive forward from the back a lot more. But the Bath and Heim combination at the back at the moment, and it's been shown the last couple of the games that they win majority of the duels and the headers. They can play they can play on the ground. They can break out from the back. They're the fact they've got Tronsa in front of them. They've got two wingers in sort of Owen Beck and Callum Britton as well. I was a bit worried about Danny Bath not too long ago coming in for Carter. We played Stoke at home. He got found out in that game very weakly for a penalty decision. I think there was even some Rovers fans were thinking, have we really got decent defensive cover other than Hayden Carter? And Karen McPherson, who unfortunately is not shown a lot, but I think he's doing a lot of work in the back. But yeah, he's been a nice coup for Rovers. And yet again, as I said to a lot of people, why else is up there, spending money, trying to get the right people in? Rovers effectively are going into the Tesco's reduced aisle, getting the items we need, but we're cooking up a storm at the moment.
It's little at this, right, Ollie?
we're happy anyway. So yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, listen, what a job John Eustace has done. He seems to have brought the fan base together. He seems to have brought the players together, and I love his sort of down-to-earth, honest man management style. So I possibly agree with Ollie Mann that maybe Blackburn might just miss out on the top six, but it's been a lovely story, and I would be as happy as anyone to see you make it. So best of luck, and look forward to catching up with you later in the season.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, lads.
Top man, Ollie. Appreciate that.
I'm feeling better soon, Ollie.
Yeah, cheers.
Delighted to be joined now by Annie Harris, a fan of another sort of playoff outsider in Bristol City of AH Robinstock. Good evening, Annie. Thanks so much for your time. That 4-0 victory over Plymouth Argyle was just what the doctor ordered, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a comfortable win. I think we all kind of just needed that after a couple of, I wouldn't say bad performances at all, on the road at Watford. They're really difficult to beat at Vicarage Road this year, haven't lost there, and Burnley at home was 50-50, could have gone either way, and Burnley, with the quality they had, just about managed to get over the line. So two kind of spirited displays that kind of lacked the end product in the final third, and to score 4 goals. And yeah, we have to acknowledge Plymouth were pretty terrible, and I keep hearing stories about they're terrible away from home, and I was like, okay, they'll probably turn up here and perform well. No, they were pretty terrible, and that was a major factor in it. But still have to beat what's in front of you, and we did it quite handsomely.
I wanted to ask you about Liam Manning's management style, Annie, because what really stands out to me is how calm he is. And I think he spoke to Bristol Live after that victory over Plymouth Argyle, where it wasn't a great first half performance from Bristol City. And there were sort of some people who, I think if it'd been the same in the second half, I think people might have been a little bit unhappy. But actually, Liam Manning sort of saw some good bits that he was actually happy with. And it was about keeping his players calm and realising the time that they've got in that final third and taking that time. And I guess that can really have its place in terms of keeping players on an even keel.
I mean, Manning, since he's come in and has always kind of mentioned, don't be too high, don't be too low, and it's a bit of a running joke in the fan base. What's he going to say after a game, whether we win, lose, or draw? And it's always the same things, really. But he's absolutely bang on, because we lacked that. Did we? I think we lacked a little bit of composure in the final third in the first half. Had a goal disallowed, which was offside marginally. Had a couple of really good chances, despite not playing anywhere near as well as we did in the second half. But to have someone like that on the touchline who doesn't kind of go with the motions of the game, doesn't get drawn in with the crowds, sometimes. He came out the other week again after the Burnley game and criticised the referee, and I was like, this is not what he does. This is not this is not what Liam Manning is normally about. But sometimes it's nice to have that emotion. But he's very, very very stable on the touchline. You can see that him. I think Chris Hogg is also a massive kind of part of that. Having him and Hogg and Manning have both mentioned how they work off each other and they're constantly communication on the touchline, and they both help each other kind of keep calm on the touchline and allow the decision making process to run its full course. And we've seen an improvement, I think, as a result of that on the pitch in terms of decisions tactically, whether that's substitutions, changing the system, either because of injuries or whatever reason. I think that's got a lot better over the last since he's come in. I think that was a major criticism last year, but this year he's had a load of injuries to deal with. I remember Preston away, where we lost George Tanner and Joe Williams inside 25 minutes, and he had to change shape, had to put George Earthy at right back, and still went on to dominate the game and comfortably win. So there was, I think, Manning is growing as this team and this squad is growing, and I think that can actually be a positive thing.
Yeah, I've been impressed with Bristol City, and it's a funny one because I think you look at the league table, and I apologise, Annie, but I've got a friend who's a Bristol City fan, and they're always joking that we always just finish 11th. We always finish 11th, and then you look at the league table now and you go, yeah, of course, Bristol City are in 11th, but it really feels as though it's been a step forward this season from when maybe it's felt like in the past. It does feel as though that gap is so much smaller. And one of the players who's really stood out to me as almost making this big jump from where he was last season is Anis Mehmeti. I think he's been fantastic since he's come in. I think his chance creation stats, his shooting ability has been really outstanding. Do you think he's starting to come into his own as a championship winger on that left-hand side? Does he feel like a standout player? Obviously, scored a fantastic goal at the weekend, which always helps.
It's so funny with Anis because he was brought in by Nigel Pearson as a Maverick player because we didn't have one of those in the squad. And even recently, I still look at him and go, some of the decisions he makes on the pitch is just sometimes baffling, and it's just like, what's he doing? Because he'll beat
he just wants to dance in that way.
yeah, he'll play on the right hand, he'll play on the left hand. Predominantly plays on the left for us. He'll cut inside every single time. He'll cut inside, try to beat his man. He'll beat him, and they'll try and beat him again about 3 times before actually making a decision on what to do. It was a lot better against Plymouth, but Watford away, he had, I want to say, 3 massive openings going past Ryan Andrews. And each single time he decided to cut back inside even further and then try and take on a shot when literally Naki Wells was coming in at the far post pretty much every time. And it would have been a big chance created. But No, Mehmeti's come on leaps and bounds. He scored some pretty important goals for us. That one at Norwich was pretty decisive in terms of how the rest of the game played out. Obviously, 2 goals yesterday. Would have been 3 if Scott Twine didn't get in the way of the first one. But no, he's really improved, and I'm fairly sure Liam Manning, when he was at Oxford, wanted to sign Anis Mehmeti on loan from us because he wasn't playing too well or wasn't really getting into the team. So it's good to have a manager who kind of trusts Mehmeti. And I think I've mentioned this a few times, Gab, where
he would have sorry, just on that, I think he would have faced Anis Mehmeti when MK Dons were in the same league as Wycombe Wanderers, so he would have kind of known about his stance from that way. So,
yeah. What I was going to say was, I think I mentioned this before on here, is that I feel like Mehmeti's the kind of player, even if he's not playing well, you just need to give him a run, because if he's constantly dripped in and out of the team, he's not going to have any sort of consistency.
Yeah.
And Manning has given him that consistency, despite us signing Hirakawa and Sam Bell becoming a more prominent.
Hirakawa and Viner, by the way, seem to have a nice little partnership striking up at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, Viner's playing on the Viner's played right back, and now we've been kind of forced to switch to a back 3 with the injuries we've had. So him on the right hand side with Hirakawa normally now right wing back, or just a bit further advanced. They're playing quite well, and then Hirakawa's just a little bit of magic. I think even if his numbers aren't on the face of it that good. He's just a classy operator. Every time he gets the ball, you're kind of confident he'll beat a man or he'll get out of a tight situation. Similar to Max Bird, really. He'll spin on a half turn and do something a little bit outrageous and get us out of a sticky position. But yeah, it's good to have that little bit of a sprinkle of quality with Anis and also with Hirakawa. So
yeah,
it's good to have those options.
Yeah, Twine can certainly provide that as well if he can find form as well. Listen, Annie, thanks so much for joining us to chat about Bristol City, and look forward to catching up later in the season.
No worries. Cheers, guys.
Thanks very much.
Delighted to be joined now by Nick Hark from Ashtung Millwall podcast. Am I getting closer, Nick?
You're getting closer, Gab. We'll have this now by the end of the season when we get relegated.
It's not, you're never there perfectly. You're getting closer every time. That's how I like to think of it. Thanks for waiting, Nick. Really appreciate you joining us this evening.
Boys. Nice to see you both again.
Yeah, likewise, mate. Just wondering how you're feeling about Millwall season so far after that 1-1 draw at Oxford.
Yeah, I mean, that was a disappointing result. We were leading at the end of the first half, and it was a grind of a game, in all truth. It was a 12:30 kickoff. It's at Oxford. We're kicking towards the car park end. The whole thing is a soulless kind of experience. But we were leading, and unfortunately, the problem that we've got this season, we're on a really good run. 9 games unbeaten after that draw, but the depth of the squad is probably what's going to find us out. So we lost Josh Coburn at half time, a lone player, but he's looked very, very good up front. That kind of changed the approach in the second half. We brought Tom Bradshaw in, which gave us a very different feel. Oxford weren't dangerous, but they had a lot of possession. But then we lost Sean Hutchinson, who's replacing our, talisman, Jake Kubo, who's out for 10 weeks, I think the club said. So, we're very quickly down to the bare bones in central defence. We bring in Murray Wallace, who I love to bits, but yeah, I just think he's probably at the back end of his time in the championship level. And the Oxford number 19, I can't think of his name, but he had time and space to pick his spot, which he did very well.
Tyler Goodrum. Yeah,
very well taken chance. He did get the freedom of Oxford in which to pick his spot, and I wish we hadn't given him that. But so 1-1. It's one of those results where we are on the back of a 9-game run, unbeaten run. And if you'd have said to me at the start of proceedings, we'll get a 1-1 draw in, Nick, I'd have said, well, that's fine. Away day trip to Oxford, great. But when you're leading, football's a funny game, isn't it? If you're leading late into a game, you somehow feel you've got victory in your grasp. And it kind of felt like we'd slipped away there. 2 points slipped away. That said, I think it's 5 points off of the 6th spot, which is, giddy stuff really for a club like Millwall at the moment. I think we're 10th in the table. And we had that kind of very strange, shambolic postponements. We have a game in hand, the dreaded game in hand, the points that don't exist, but you put them on the table in your mind, you know. So yeah, I mean, it's a good season in all honesty. I think we've said it before. I think on this show when I come on here, resources and lack of squad depth will probably be the thing that undoes us in the end. But on our day, you know, we've had some big scalps at the Den this season. We've beaten Burnley, we've beaten Leeds, and ran Sunderland close in a 1-1 draw. So these are big hitters, and we at the Den certainly I think we're contenders. I just worry a little bit that against clubs like Oxford, no disrespect to them at all or their facilities, but it's just hard to get motivated. Whereas it's always a bit of a giant killing David v Goliath sense at the Den, which is what we respond to best.
I'd be more confident about Millwall playing Leeds at home than I would about Millwall going away to, you know, a bottom side.
There's a standard joke where there's no Millwall fan worth his salt will think that we can beat Leeds, we can beat Burnley, give Sunderland a run for their money, and should have probably taken 3 points off of them. And then where are you going to go? You're going to go to Pompey, and then you're going to go to Oxford. You just know what's going to come. You know, so we're not going to perform at those places. It's in the DNA, Gab. It's, you know, it's who we are.
It's bizarre how much it plays out as well. I was just looking at some of the stats. It's 2 points per game at home and 1 point per game away from home. And I think that just about perfectly sums up exactly what we're talking about. But you're not making me feel any better, Nick, because we're at the Den. Is it a week on Wednesday? You're making me come out in a cold sweat just thinking about it.
Wednesday, that's Sheffield United. Yeah, that's right. That'd be a big game, big night, big club. I like Chris Wilder. I think he's the closest thing to a man that could come in and manage Millwall, which is intended as a compliment for him, because it's a strange venue, really, Ollie. I mean, it's, you know, you've got to be able to manage the emotion of the place. You're not just a manager. You somehow got to almost be like a leader of an orchestra. You got to sort of feed it and you know, nudge it along. And I watched Sheffield actually beat Sunderland on TV on Friday night, and I thought there's a man that understands his venue, that gets the vibe of Bramall Lane. Great stadium, which I love. I love visiting Bramall Lane. It's a proper stadium. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a big game. So we probably might struggle against Coventry, although we do have the pantomime villains of Frank Lampard and Joe Edwards as his sidekick, who managed us briefly, or inverted commas, managed us last season. So they're going to come down to Den on Saturday. So that should give us a bit more fire in the belly for a game that otherwise might be a bit of an empty one, you know.
Talking of managers, Nick, I sometimes wonder if Neil Harris can get away with saying things that other Millwall managers might not be able to. So I looked at News at Den for his sort of post-match comments at Oxford, and he talked about a lack of clinical finishing in front of goal. He said something about the lack of quality, and it might be an issue with Millwall Football Club. And it just got me thinking, imagine if Steve Lomas, Ian Holloway or Joe Edwards had said the lack of quality is to do with Millwall Football Club. But because it's Neil Harris, I feel like everyone just kind of takes some of his word kind of thing.
He's as close to a living statue as, you know. I mean, you know, other clubs have statues of great players, and he's probably the nearest thing we've got, because he has great depth of Millwall-ness, doesn't he? I mean, the playing record alone, then the managerial level, saved us from relegation last season. It was down to him. It was down to the grit that he brought in. I mean, there was some views exchanged. I'm trying to think of a good, clean way to put it on your family show here, Gav. some views were exchanged at the end of Saturday's performance.
Is that what you said to each other? I'm exchanging a view with you.
I say, sir, that wasn't very good second half. That kind of exchange of views, you know. Damn your eyes. There were views exchanged. I mean, I think the criticism of Neil Harris is, on the one hand, and I'd say this about Millwall Football Club in general, we are, as I always put it, we're the eternal underdogs. We just love the big time, us against the world, bring in Leeds, bring in Everton, bring in Leicester City as champions, you name it. Bring them into that kind of bear pit, and it's great stuff. Bring in someone like, I don't know, you're trying to think a less exciting prospect, and we struggle. I think any situation where we're required to break down opposition who have set up to to make it difficult. We struggle. I can't remember the statistics, but we've won one of those fixtures with a quarter of the percentage of the ball. And I'm not one for the stats, as you know, but even I know if you don't have the football very much, you probably won't win many games. But that's kind of what we've been doing, and that's down to Neil Harris's personality and drive. So that's great in cup tie style situations, and those kind of games I would put as kind of cup ties almost. It's where over a league you need to grind out results and get results at places that make it difficult. It's where we struggle a little bit. I think we probably will continue to struggle. Whereas with the prospect of Sheffield United coming down with a big time Premier League vibes, it's game on, isn't it? It's the gladiator kind of bear pit type of situation, and that's what we live for. There we are.
Do you think Neil Harris is going to regret offloading Alex Mitchell now there's these issues at the back?
Well, if he's not regretting it, Gab, I'm certainly regretting it, because I might have to take my boots along Saturday, because I think I might be a bit of a shot at centre half. And I'll tell you, boys, my pace has gone. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of, I haven't really followed Alex since he's gone to Charlton, so I don't know how he's doing that. I'm going to guess he probably was doing quite well. He did okay on loan at Lincoln, and he did okay, I think he was at Orient. And we never really saw him at the Den, so I can't really say I know that much about him, if I'm going to be honest. But he was certainly there as a prospect. And at the moment, with Jake Cooper down, with probably Sean Hutchinson down, he may be fit for Saturday, but he cramped up on Oxford. So we're then coming down to players coming out of position slightly. Maybe Ryan Leonard could go in the middle. Maybe Murray Wallace can fit in there. They've both done it in the past. But
yeah, Ryan Leonard's the kind of player who can just fill in there with no fuss, isn't he? Yeah,
great player. I think as a servant for Millwall particularly, but I know he also was well thought of at Sheffield and I think Southend before that. But for us, great servant, and he would do a job. Jeffet Tanganga is our rock in central defence. I don't quite know how we've managed to sign him, because he looks like a Premier League defender. And, a bit like Romain Esse, we might come on to him later, but you sometimes wonder what are these jewels doing in our sides? It's like having the crown jewels, and you've looked in your drawer upstairs and you found the two jewels there. So he's a rock. But I do wonder whether the whole Alex Mitchell thing. We don't really know enough about what was behind that. Maybe the boy wanted regular football. Probably weren't going to get it as long as we've got a fit back line, and that's why he's moved to Charlton. So good luck to him.
Absolutely. You mentioned Femi Aziz and Romain Esse there, Nick. Are they the ones bringing inspiration to the Millwall perspiration at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, Aziz is a story that I love, because when he first came to us, I'll be honest with everyone watching this, I thought, I don't know, I wasn't convinced by the boy. He'd come from Reading. He didn't look on it at all, and I thought, what have we signed here? I think again there were some frank exchanges of views, and he came back from an international breakup. From what I understand, he wasn't with an international side, so he's worked at the Den on his game with players, and he's turned it around. He's looking really, really, really effective. It's almost a Hollywood style, the Disney Channel story of turning your life around, some kind of self-help thing. He's really looking effective. I'm really enjoying watching Femi Aziz. He scored a brilliant equaliser against Sunderland, and each game though, for me, he's a must pick. He's gone from 0 to hero. So no, great story. Romain Esse, we've mentioned before. Top prospect. He's now the next level of Romain's game, I think, is going to be dealing with teams that put 2 men on him, 3 men I've seen to contain him. That's the next level, and that's what top players can do.
Sure.
I think he's got it, and I think he will work his way around that. But at the moment, no, we're seeing a lot of sides coming to the Den to really close him out of the game, because he's danger, and I understand why they're doing it. But that's what he's got to find a way around. But Aziz, great player. I've been loving watching him lately.
2 exciting young players. Nick, Millwall are doing some great stuff this season. It's been lovely to follow. So, good luck for the rest of the season, and look forward to catching up again soon.
Thank you, chaps. Speak soon. All the best.
Thanks, Nick.
Top man, Nick. Delighted to be joined now by our final guest, Connor Southwell of Pinken. Good evening, Connor. Thanks for taking the time out. Just wondering, Millwall. Still got Millwall in my head now. Norwich City, you seem to have found your groove again after a bit of a drop in form after Josh Sargent's injury, or at least I'd kind of made that connection. But at the moment, it's Ante Cernak who's the one in form, with the likes of Emiliano Marcondes very much impressing as well. And Borja Sainz becoming the first player to hit 15, the quickest player to hit 15 in the season since Hugh Curran in 1968.
Yeah, good evening, gents. Thank you for having me on. Always a pleasure. Yeah, I think it was Josh Sargent, but it was also Angus Gunn. Kenny McLean was missing for 4 games. They had, I think, at the height of it, about 10 players out injured, all of whom, if were available and fit, would be part of the matchday squad. So it is naturally correlating the fact that when those players have been out, they had that very difficult week where should have beaten Cardiff actually, but the games against Sheffield Wednesday and Bristol City, they were running on fumes. Then the international break came at a really good time, and they've been able to get some bodies back and, like you say, find some sort of different solutions, particularly from an attacking perspective. I think Jack Stacey is maybe a really good example of that. And Emi Marcondes you mentioned as well. So yeah, a combination of some really good coaching solutions that has been found, and also the return of some key players and important players, plus obviously some stepping up now, which is good to see with Ante Cernak. So all of those things, you put them in a bowl and you get probably the last week for Norwich City, which has been 12 goals, 7 points, and yeah, another wave of optimism returning, which has been good and much needed.
Yeah, a brilliant week. And I think it's really great to hear that there's that optimism coming back as well. But just to reiterate, we talked there about some of the really important players that Norwich were missing. And I have to admit, I'd not realised how important Angus Gunn was, but how big was that sort of him coming back into the squad? Because obviously George Long is a goalkeeper I know really well. He came through at United. He's a local sort of lad for us, but I'm also aware of the struggles that he's had, particularly when he came in to deputise this season. Just how important is it that Gunn is available every week now? And do you think that might be something that Norwich try to look at in terms of the backup?
Yeah, it's huge. Undoubtedly, he's been Norwich number one really since he sort of shaded out Tim Krul over to 18 months ago now, and has been really consistent. I've got to be honest, I don't think it's been his best start to the season in terms of the levels that he hit last year, but there's been sort of reasons for that. But yeah, it's a massive difference in quality, I think, when Angus Gunn is in goal compared to George Long, and I think probably the games have exposed that. And equally, I think it's been tough on George Long because he gets sort of picked apart a little bit, his performances, and every goal that Norwich concede, if he's in goal, seems to sort of fall on his shoulders in the eyes of some, and I think that's a little bit harsh. But I think you can see, and it's not just sort of the presence and the shot stopping ability, it's the trust that the defenders have, and just the reassurance that the back line now has to an extent. You probably wouldn't realise that with the goals that Norwich are conceding, but yeah, it's made a huge difference. And I think him and Kenny McLean returning as well, those two have been the big ones for Norwich City, because they lost essentially the spine of their team with Sargent. McLean obviously was self-inflicted, and for an experienced player to make the error that he did was really disappointing. Angus Gunn, clearly a big blow as well. And it was really only Shane Duffy in terms of experience that they had in their side. So they were having to rely on players who were young, who were new to the country, new to the league, and probably relying on a few of those, whereas before they had a team that was capable of carrying some of those guys. So yeah, it's been massive to get Angus Gunn back, and I think you've seen in the last week or so, not just him, but partly him, the difference that it's made in terms of Norwich City's performances and results. To be fair, I don't think the two things are not interconnected.
One of the hardest things in football, I think, Connor, is striking, especially for possession-based sides when it's a new kind of process, I guess, playing that way, is striking that balance between having that sort of positional and spatial discipline and having control and order with enough room for individual expression. And one thing that really impresses me about Norwich City is that I would have thought that for this kind of phase one, if you like, of Johannes Hofball, if you like, I would have kind of expected Norwich to actually be quite a low-scoring side, because I would have expected it to take a long time for him to get his ideas across, and for the early days to actually be quite regimented and very disciplined and control based, to the point that maybe it's difficult for players to actually find the confidence to find that individual expression. But you found that sweet spot straight away, which really impressed me. And I think you're the top goal scorers in the division, which is and certainly at home, which is crazy.
Yeah, and that helps when you've got a player like Borja Sainz, right, who is outperforming basically all of his metrics and is a quality finisher. But again, you speak to Johannes about it, and he's very keen to point out the structure behind him, because you look at the opportunities that he has, the chances that he's being exposed to, they're very similar. They're all quite similar in terms of the chances. And if you watched a reel of his goals, yes, there'd be obviously the 25-yard ones, but if you watch them, they're all quite. They're in him getting the ball in familiar positions. And I think the big change that Johannes Hotorup has made to Borja Sainz to, say, David Wagner last year is that Norwich are getting him the ball higher up the pitch more consistently.
It's more at the end of moves, isn't it, Connor? Yeah. It's like he's kind of popping up at the end.
Yeah, and I think, and this is funny to say, I recognise from the outside, but I've probably been, before this sort of run of goal scoring, quite frustrated with Borja Sainz, because I felt there's so much, and I still feel there's so much more from him. I don't think he's anywhere near creative enough for maybe his ability, but yeah, as a goal scorer, you can't deny what he's got. And I think maybe at points Norwich have been, and this is where I think they've addressed it slightly this week, they've been a little bit lopsided. They've been very left-sided. A lot of their attacks have come through Borja Sainz, and at times there's been an over-reliance on him. What he's done this week in order to basically make Jack Stacey a real outlet for them by pushing a Mankrel Forsen inside and having an inverted right winger to drag a fullback out and basically create space for Jack Stacey to run. It's not a will. It's not as gun-ho as it was last year. It's more calculated and more intelligent. I think we're beginning to see, with Sainz, with Stacey, with some other elements that he's sort of weaved into the team, the quality of coach that Norwich City have. And like you say, it's still very early on. It's what 18 games into the season. For them to have an identity as clear as they do, like you, I was probably expecting them to really struggle creatively. We saw that in year one under Daniel Farke, for example, a few years ago when he was implementing his philosophy. The fact that they aren't that, I think, is speaks volumes about the very talented.
This is miles better than that 17-18 side, by the way. In terms of creativity and and
they're doing that as well with Josh Sargent still to drop in. They're doing that without having a right winger. Really, they haven't really nailed down that position yet. They're doing it with younger players. I mean, it's phenomenal what they're doing. They're so far ahead of where I thought they'd be at this stage. And it's now about consistency for me. That's now the next bit that they need to achieve, and hopefully with some players back and. The next two games they've got QPR and Portsmouth. We know what this league is like, and it's never easy, and it does catch you on the chin when you think that you've cracked it, but it's a real opportunity for them. I think that's the way that they have to view it, without any sort of complacency or arrogance. It's a real opportunity for them to get a decent haul of points and push themselves back to maybe where they were before that 3-game losing streak before the November international break.
Well, I've no doubt that consistency is around the corner, whether that corner is this season or next. Some great work being done at Norwich City on and off the field, Connor. So it's been great to get your insight on it, and best luck for the rest of the season.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Always good to come on.
Top man, Connor. Thanks so much. No, we don't have another guest, so I'm finishing off the show. Thanks to all my guests this evening. Thanks to my lovely co-host, Ollie Mann of Sheffield United Way. Thanks to you for watching at home. Get subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify, and we'll see you again next week.